Hello and welcome to episode 1351 of Stand Up with Pete Dominick. Joining me today is the Secretary of State of the great state of Michigan. It's Jocelyn Benson, who is now running for governor. She's written an excellent and important new book. It's called Purposeful Warrior. I had a great conversation with Jocelyn. I went live with her on YouTube yesterday, and it begins at about 30 minutes into today's show. But first, I've got your news headlines and clips, a clip show for you. So let's get to it like I do every day. I want to remind you that it is Thursday as I'm taping this, and I will be hosting a happy hour hangout, a Stand Up with Pete Dominick happy hour hangout at 8 p.m. East. I do it every Monday and Thursday for paid subscribers. If you're not a paid subscriber, you should be. Sign up now. It's patreon.com/Pete Dominick, and I hope to see you at 8 p.m. tonight. All right, time for the headlines. Yeah! The stupid tyrant in charge of everything gets a tremendous amount of attention each and every day. We hate to talk about him, but he is the president/tiny king, and he has been rammering on about some major announcement, some major trade deal. He talked about it yesterday. He would not say which country, and of course didn't remain a mystery for very long. Last night, the New York Times revealed the country would be the United Kingdom. That's right. President expected to announce today that the United States will strike a trade agreement with Britain, according to three people familiar with the plans. According to the New York Times, Trump administration appears to be nearing deals with India and Israel and is continuing to negotiate with South Korea, Japan, Vietnam, and other nations. It's all a scam. It's all a show. It's not the way these deals should be broken. It's not the way these deals should be made. There's nothing good to say about this, I'm sure. We'll see how the deal shakes out, but in the end, I think folks are going to have nothing but regrets about the way that this has been handled. But we'll see. And it's all about hype for the guy and getting attention and then giving himself credit for it all as if he did anything at all. In other very important news that will affect your life, that's the standard that I go by in terms of how I editorially choose to pick the stories that I read for you in the headlines. The Fed held interest rates steady yesterday. There was an announcement at the Fed by the chairman, Jerome Powell, who said the next step is, quote, not at all clear. Oh, great. He warned on Wednesday that President Trump's tariff regime could lead to increased inflation and unemployment, as well as a slowdown in the U.S. economy as a whole. Get ready for more mean tweets about Jerome Powell. We'll see how that shakes out, but no moves from the Fed on interest rates. Now on to sad news coming out of Tennessee. More than 2 years after a young man named Tyree Nichols died from his injuries sustained during a brutal beating after a traffic stop, 3 former Memphis police officers have been found not guilty of causing his death. The 3 officers were acquitted yesterday on all state charges, including second-degree murder and the fatal beating of Tyree Nichols, after he ran away from a traffic stop, a death that sparked nationwide protests and prompted renewed calls for police reforms in the United States. He was a 29-year-old black man. He was yanked out of his car, pepper sprayed, and hit with a taser. The 5 officers were also black, and they beat the shit out of him. They punched him, they kicked him with a police baton, struggling to handcuff him as he called out for his mother just steps from his home. He died just 3 days after the beating, January 10th, 2023. Civil rights attorney Ben Crump, who represents the Nichols family, issued a statement expressing outrage as the outcome of the trial. Today's verdicts are devastating miscarriage of justice. The world watched as Tyree Nichols was beaten to death by those who sworn to protect and serve. The Memphis District Attorney, Steve Mulroy, also said he respects the jury, but he thinks the evidence was there for every charge that prosecutors brought. They also moved the case from a mostly black town to a mostly white town to get almost entirely white jury, is my understanding. So that case, very controversial, very upsetting, very, very sad, and that is it's not over there in Tennessee, but I did want to mention that story here. Now let's go to North Carolina, where we've got some major news, and this is good news. Titanic news, as somebody wrote on social media. I saw, after 6 months of despicably trying to steal a Supreme Court race in North Carolina, Republican Jefferson Griffin has finally conceded to the Democrat there. Justice Allison Riggs, federal judge, rejected Republican efforts to throw out thousands of votes cast in the North Carolina Supreme Court race. This comes after 2 recounts confirmed that the Republican candidate Jefferson Griffin lost to the Democratic Allison Riggs by 734 votes. Rare good news for democracy. The stakes in the race were very high because North Carolina's legislative district maps are among the most gerrymandered in the country. They now heavily favor Republicans, and the state Supreme Court decides whether to uphold or overturn them. So that is also huge news. Yesterday, the tiny tyrant king pulled the Surgeon General nominee after conspiracy theorist Laura Loomer, who seems to have a stranglehold on his decision, called for the Fox News alumni's head. President Trump resolved to withdraw his nomination of a former Fox News contributor named Jeanette Neishawat to serve as the Surgeon General on Wednesday after a far-right activist, Laura Loomer, called for just that in a series of social media texts earlier this week. The White House is said to be pulling his nomination, and the new nominee looks to be very unqualified. Shocking, right? His new pick for Surgeon General dropped out of medical residency and has an inactive medical license. Her name is Casey Means. She's a 37-year-old wellness influencer. She earned an MD from Stanford University, but she soon diverged from the traditional career path for doctors. Over the past few years, his new nominee has gained fame and influence within various wellness circles, including the Make America Healthy Again circle led by RFK Jr., and she's been on podcasts with Tucker Carlson and Joe Rogan and Megyn Kelly. She's got her own podcast newsletter. Of course, past Surgeon Generals have had a long career in public health or education. Several nurses have held the position, including one selected by Trump in his first term and one by President Joe Biden. But their resumes include years of working in infectious disease research, prevention, and treatment. So a lot to learn, and I'm sure we'll learn a lot about Dr. Casey Means. Also learned yesterday that U.S. officials said they plan to deport migrants to Libya. Both of the country's rival governments decided that they had agreed to a deal. Well, I don't know about that. We'll see if that actually happens or not. Trump pleaded ignorance on us. I don't know. You have to ask the people in charge. I don't know anything about Libya. Another sharp escalation in a deportation program that has sparked widespread legal challenges, intense political debate. You can expect another court fight over this. Apparently, the U.S. is stepping up its intelligence efforts regarding, wait for it, Greenland. That's right, drawing America's spying apparatus into President Trump's campaign to take over the island. It could make a little bit more sense to devote our finite intelligence resources to actual security threats, but Trump wants to take over Greenland, so that sounds like a great place to serve a deployment of any sort. I thought this was interesting. Moderna's combined COVID and flu shot outperformed the existing standalone vaccines for both viruses, according to the result of a phase 3 clinical trial published Wednesday in the Journal of American Medical Association. That could be a really important progress if the Trump administration doesn't kill it. Our tiny king yesterday made plans to announce while on his trip to Saudi Arabia next week, the United States will now refer to the Persian Gulf as the Arabian Gulf or the Gulf of Arabia. Also, the reconciliation bill that Trump wants to get passed, that will probably never pass, he really does want to call it officially the One Big Beautiful Bill. That's what he wants to name it. So that's weird. And how about this? Every presidential offensive against traditionally independent agencies is another step in a regressive direction. Well, the vice chair of the National Transportation Safety Board has been abruptly removed from his position, according to the news. A rare move that comes as a federal agency charged with investigating the aviation disasters juggles more than 1,000 cases. Trump administration removed Alvin Brown a little more than a year after he was sworn in for a term that was supposed to end in 2026. White House didn't say why Alvin Brown was removed from the National Transportation Safety Board, but it's probably because he was doing his job. Just guessing. I don't know. And this. The Disney company said it had reached an agreement to build a theme park in Abu Dhabi on the Persian Gulf. Although, isn't that going to be the Gulf of Arabia? They better get it right. All right, those are the headlines I've got for you from yesterday. Now it's time to get to the clip show. All right, let's start with the governor of Minnesota, former VP candidate. It's Tim Walz. I think he was on MSNBC last night. I thought this was an important clip. I wanted to share it with you. Take it away, Governor Walz.
He told you he would end the war in Ukraine. He would bring prices down, eggs, and now telling people, when did government get to tell you how many dolls your child has? I mean, this was my whole point about this. Government just big enough to fit in your bedroom, your womb, and apparently now in your toy chest. That is, it's insane. It's a command economy with him dictating. It is no free market principles. My farmers have worked years to cultivate markets in a free market around the world, and we have thrived at that. We feed the world. We clothe the world. We power the world. Donald Trump is now deciding that he gets to do all of that. And the real thing is to enrich the industries he chooses. He's picking the winners and losers. And in this case, the billionaires are winning. The rest of us are losing.
Yes, of course. And when did the government get to tell you how many dollies you get to have? It is the most anti-American of all things. Curbing our consumption. We don't do that. Certainly don't do shared sacrifice. All right, let's get to Senator James Lankford of Oklahoma. He stepped in some real shit by recognizing the rule of law and accidentally telling the truth about how immigration courts work and what the Constitution says for those who are here, quote, illegally or without documentation.
What's been confusing on this is some people see due process like as an American citizen. That's a right to a jury trial. That's all those different things. That's not true for due process for someone who's not a citizen of the United States. It's a different process. It's often just literally what people call an immigration judge is not a typical federal judge or a state judge. This is someone that's in the bureaucracy, that their task for DHS is that task on it. So they're a government employee career. That's an immigration judge. So it's a very different process for it. But yes, there's a need to be able to give an opportunity for someone to be able to make an argument before they're removed in the country. It's just what's been confusing on this is some people see due process like as an American citizen. That's a right to a jury trial. That's all those different things. That's not true for due process for someone who's not a citizen of the United States. It's a different process. It's often just literally what people call an immigration judge is not a typical federal judge or a state judge. This is someone that's in the bureaucracy, that their task for DHS is that task on it. So they're a government employee career. That's an immigration judge. So it's a very different process for it. But yes, there's a need to be able to give an opportunity for someone to be able to make an argument before they're removed in the country. It's just.
Yeah, that's the truth. But now MAGA is coming after Senator James Lankford, who was one of the people who worked on immigration reform in the U.S. Senate, just to see it get tanked by the president, or when he was not the president, when he was in criminal court. He said, don't sign that. Wait till I get there. And of course, it's never going to happen. All right, well, here is the FBI chief. It's Kash Patel. He had to answer some questions yesterday. He was under fire from Congresswoman Dean, and it did not go so well for him, or he became really Trumpy. Now that he's confirmed, he did not like much like being called a criminal who had perjured himself during his confirmation hearings, and he fought back MAGA style, but I think the point was made by Congresswoman Dean.
During your Senate confirmation hearings, you repeatedly denied having any involvement as a private citizen in the firing of FBI officials who engaged in the prosecution against January 6th insurrectionists, the violent rioters who beat and killed Capitol police officers, and whom you referred to as political prisoners. Since then, multiple whistleblowers have come forward, and we know that you likely committed perjury. At the same hearing, you claimed you were not familiar with Stu Peters, an anti-Semitic Holocaust denier, despite the fact that you appeared on Mr. Peters' podcast 8 separate times. 8 times. And you claimed not to recall. Mr. Patel, my second question is, should we worry more about your memory or your veracity?
We should worry more about your lack of candor. You're accusing me of committing perjury. Tell the American people how I broke the law and committed a felony. Have the audacity to actually put the facts forward instead of lying for political banter so you can have a 20-second donation hit.
The answer is both. I believe that the
answer is you're failing, not me.
I my time.
Go ahead.
Oh, he's such a dick. He's such an unbelievable dick and terrible at his job and a terrible person, and he sounds very childlike in his arguments as well. All right, well, we love Jasmine Crockett, and yesterday here was her amazing questioning from an oversight subcommittee hearing, I believe. Less of a questioning and more of a fun game that she decided to play at this stupid charade of a hearing.
So, Miss Goss-Graves, I want to play a game. It's called Trump or Trans. You ready?
Okay.
So I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to tell me whether or not it is Trump or trans people that are responsible. You understand?
Got it.
Okay, very good. The first one, gutted medical research.
Trump.
Kidnapping Americans and sending them to foreign countries, a.k.a. deporting them.
Trump.
Driving us into a recession.
Trump.
Increasing the cost of everything.
Trump.
Waging an idiotic tariff war.
Trump.
Harming farmers.
Trump.
Ignoring the Constitution.
Trump.
Proposing to take away Social Security.
Trump.
Cutting health care.
Trump.
Firing government workers who keep our country safe.
Trump.
Encouraging an environment of hate and divisiveness.
Trump.
Thank you so much. This committee could be engaged in actual oversight of fraud, waste, abuse, and mismanagement. So let's talk about waste. Like Trump's plan to spend almost $100 million for his little birthday parade. Or how he spent 25% of his first 100 days golfing, costing taxpayers tens of millions of dollars. In fact, it's a little bit over 30 million at our last estimation. In fact, President Trump is on pace to spend more than $1 billion of taxpayer dollars just on golfing. Yet the Republicans have been silent. So they must think spending taxpayer dollars on the president's golfing trips is more important than providing health care to their constituents. And when I talk about constituents, we're going to talk about the ones on this committee.
Yes. Oh, we love her. We love Jasmine Crockett and the way that she talks to people very, very much. Very entertaining, very effective, and it triggers some. All right, sorry about that. I don't know why I had a Jasmine Crockett jingle. I'm just alone here, and I thought I would sing because it made me feel like it. She makes me feel like it. All right, somebody who doesn't make me feel as much happiness or like singing is the chairman of the Fed. This is Jerome Powell yesterday announcing that interest rates will go unchanged and that everything seems very uncertain.
The tariff increases announced so far have been significantly larger than anticipated. All of these policies are still evolving, however, and their effects on the economy remain highly uncertain. As economic conditions evolve, we'll continue to determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the outlook, and the balance of risks. If the large increases in tariffs that have been announced are sustained, they're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment. The effects on inflation could be short-lived, reflecting a one-time shift in the price level. It is also possible that the inflationary effects could instead be more persistent. Avoiding that outcome will depend on the size of the tariff effects, on how long it takes for them to pass through fully into prices, and ultimately on keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored. Immigration, fiscal policy, and regulation. The tariff increases announced so far have been significantly larger than anticipated. All of these policies are still evolving, however, and their effects on the economy remain highly uncertain. As economic conditions evolve, we'll continue to determine the appropriate stance of monetary policy based on the incoming data, the outlook, and the balance of risks. If the large increases in tariffs that have been announced are sustained, they're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment. The effects on inflation could be short-lived, reflecting a one-time shift in the price level. It is also possible that the inflationary effects could instead be more persistent. Avoiding that outcome will depend on the size of the tariff effects, on how long it takes for them to pass through fully into prices, and ultimately on keeping longer-term inflation expectations well anchored.
There you go, the chairman of the Fed. Sexy as always. All right, well, let's now go to Congressman Greg Cesar. He represents the 35th District of Texas. He's a progressive and one of the leaders of the Progressive Caucus, and I think he's very smart. I grabbed 2 clips from him yesterday at hearings, and believe it or not, Marjorie Taylor Greene is the chairwoman of this subcommittee on DOGE. And in her opening remarks, she talked about unfair play, keeping men out of women's sports. And she specifically looked at USA fencing team. And that's why you hear Congressman Cesar refer to fencing, which apparently he doesn't know anything about.
Goes around a building, but like the sport with the swords. And I've knocked on thousands of doors and talked to thousands of Republican, independent, and Democratic voters in my career. And not a single time has someone flung open their door and said, "Thank God you're here, Congressman. I want to ask you about transgender people fencing." It's just never happened. I've never even met a fencer before. I've just seen it on The Parent Trap. I'm sure it's a great sport, but what the hell are we doing here? Seriously. We're here because Chairwoman Marjorie Taylor Greene thinks that if she picks on vulnerable people, like trans folks, she can avoid having a discussion about the allegations of insider trading against her. She thinks that she can distract from the fact that Trump and MAGA Republicans are raising your costs every single day, suppressing your wages every single day, stealing your taxpayer dollars every single day, and threatening your health care. That's the reason we're at this crazy hearing today.
And even more, this is even better. The next clip, I loved this. I don't think it needs much of a setup.
Authority has called a hearing on anti-Semitism, and so I have some questions for my colleagues on the committee. Donald Trump said after neo-Nazis marched through Charlottesville that they were, quote, very fine people on both sides. If you condemn Donald Trump saying this, will you raise your hand? RFK, the head of Health and Human Services, spread an anti-Semitic conspiracy theory that COVID was engineered to target white and black people, but spare Jewish people. If you condemn the head of the U.S. Health and Human Services for spreading this anti-Semitic conspiracy theory, will you please raise your hand? Nobody.
I'd suggest the hearing is to question the witnesses that are here who have spent time and energy to come here.
I have a question for you, Mr. Chairman.
So I think the questioning is...
Mr. Chairman, will you condemn...
I am not on the witness stand.
Mr. Chairman, this is my time, and I'm happy to ask you then. Would you condemn Donald Trump for pardoning a January 6th rioter who praised Hitler and encouraged more killing of Jewish people? Mr. Chairman, since you just used some of my time, you can use more of it. Will you condemn Trump for pardoning an anti-Semitic rioter?
I'm seeing 4 witnesses waiting for your question.
I'm asking you a question, Mr. Chairman. Your microphone works. Do you condemn this?
I will yield time to the witnesses to answer questions that are pertinent.
So clearly, Mr. Chairman, not a single Republican today has been willing to condemn any of this anti-Semitism. Unfortunately, the party of very fine people on both sides, or Jewish space lasers, does not give a damn about stopping anti-Semitism. If my Republican colleagues want to stop the spread of anti-Semitism, maybe they should stop apologizing for and promoting anti-Semites. And with all due respect to the Congresswoman from New York who's back to join us, if Republicans want to fight anti-Semitism, they shouldn't go groveling to the most anti-Semitic president in modern American history.
I've been waiting for somebody to say it just like that and put those Republicans on the spot. And Congressman Cesar did it. Very well done, sir. Very well done. Kudos, applause, and thank you. All right, now let's head over to economist Justin Wolfers. He was on MSNBC yesterday with Nicole Wallace. I think this guy's analysis is really good. And whenever I see him on TV or social media, I watch and read. Here we go.
You know, Justin, when Ryan's correct to point out Trump's long-standing affinity for tariffs, but they were not blanket tariffs dropped on the whole world in a globally destabilizing manner the first time around. The idea of bailing out every industry that's been hurt isn't viable. What is the best case scenario for American small businesses at this point?
The best case scenario is that the president backs off. It's an important point you make. He did run on tariffs, but he ran on them once before. And when he ran on them last time, he used them a little bit more carefully. There were tariffs on steel and aluminium and washing machines. They were all quite destructive, but they're actually small parts of the economy. The thing he's done differently this time is he's ratcheted up American tariffs. So we are easily the highest tariff nation among any leading industrialized country. And our tariff rates are roughly 10 times that, literally 10 times that of our trading partners. They're above what you may have heard of, the Depression-era Smoot-Hawley tariffs. And there's a funny fact, which you have to be an economist to really geek out on this, which is the pain that a tariff causes rises in the square of the tariff rate. So what that means is not just that things are bad or worse, they're worse squared. I, in fact, did a calculation that suggested the pain that this set of tariffs is going to cause is going to be roughly 50 times larger than the tariffs that Trump imposed in his first term.
Explain that to us. What does that mean? What does that mean for consumers? What does that mean for business owners? What does that mean for the American economy?
Well, I think folks watching probably recognize this, which is we had tariffs in 2018, and mostly life went on. When I wanted to go to the store, I went to the store. If I was thinking about buying a dishwasher, I might have a washing machine, I might have second thoughts, but that's just about it. But now, realize that everything we buy is at risk. So next time you go to the grocery store, pick things up off the shelf and have a look at where they're made. Many of them will be made in China. Many of the things that aren't made in China, though, are made maybe in the US using inputs from China. Think about things like, yes, the president makes fun of plastic dolls, but actually it turns out American Girl dolls also come from China. But more than that, it's strollers, it's toasters, it's equipment. If you're a tradesman, a lot of your equipment is currently made in China. And remember, with 145% tariff, it basically becomes impossible to buy any of those things. So you and me, our family budgets and how we make plans depends entirely on what happens in the White House. And it's even harder than that because they haven't announced a single clear, coherent policy. We have tariffs, then we don't. Then we're on a pause, then we're not. Then we're going to make deals, and actually we're not going to make deals. I'm just going to say a new number. And so I don't know. I got a mate, he's trying to decide whether to buy an air conditioner. He asked me, should I buy it now? And I said, well, tariffs are high. Maybe they'll come down, but maybe they'll go up. I don't know. And we're all frozen in place. And that being frozen in place shapes our lives, but it also potentially is the start of a recession.
All right, Justin Wolfers with some great analysis on MSNBC. Let's head over to CNN, where Caitlin Collins had the commissioner of the Port of Seattle, a guy named Ryan Calkins, on, who issued a stark reminder about the potential fallout of President's trade policy. I don't know why this clip is in mono. It might only play in your left ear. If that's the case, my apologies ahead of time.
Of America. So it's great to have you here tonight, sir. The tariffs so far, I wonder for you directly, what is the impact that you're seeing? How could you sum up how much your job has changed because of the policies coming out of the White House tonight?
Thanks for having me, Caitlin. I can see it right over my shoulder here. I'm looking out at the Port of Seattle right now, and we currently have no container ships at berth. And that happens every once in a while in normal times, but it is pretty rare. And so to see it tonight is, I think, a stark reminder that the impacts of the tariffs have real implications. It means that we don't have longshore workers on the dock right now unloading merchandise. We don't have trains taking that merchandise to inland ports and all the way across the country to places like Des Moines, Iowa, and Chicago, Illinois. And that's hundreds of jobs right here in our region and across the country.
You have none at your port right now?
We currently do not have any container ships at port right now. That's correct.
And that's because just nothing is being shipped over? I mean, that's pretty remarkable.
Well, it is. It's pretty unusual. We do anticipate, I was looking at our schedule, we anticipate about 25 vessel calls between here and the port of Tacoma over the next 7 days. And keep in mind, we're not just importing from Asia or just China. We do have activity from all over the world, largely the Pacific Rim, but we are seeing a significant drop in container volume through our gateway.
You said this is rare. I mean, can you think of the last time that this happened, that you didn't have any of them coming in at your port?
Probably the height of the pandemic was the last time I saw it, before we really started to see the surge in cargo towards the end of the pandemic.
All right. Well, that's going to have to be your comedy, too. Wasn't it hilarious? I thought that was hilarious. I usually end the news segment with a comedy bit, but I ran out of time, and I really want to get this up running super late this morning. So let's get to my conversation right now with Jocelyn Benson. But thank you very much for listening to the news segment. If you did, I really appreciate it. I can't do it without your support. Patreon.com/Pete Dominick. Takes a lot of time to put that together, to produce it all. You wouldn't believe it. So thank you very much. But now it's time to get to the Secretary of State of Michigan. She is a very impressive person, a transformational leader who doesn't seem to ever back down from fights. She's run over now 35 marathons, I learned. You can learn more about her at Jocelyn JocelynBenson.com. I highly recommend you get her new book. It's called Purposeful Warrior. She's now running for governor there. You can watch my interview with her if you want to watch us, youtube.com/standupwithpete. You can follow and support her on all the social media where, of course, she is. I was very happy to get her on the show and happy to do the interview live on YouTube. If you're not subscribed to that, do it now. Let's do it now with Jocelyn Benson for the first time ever, the Secretary of State, hopefully future governor of Michigan, Jocelyn Benson. Wow, there she is, the Secretary of State of Michigan, one of my favorite states, got a lot of roots there, and a purposeful warrior. Madam Secretary, welcome to Stand Up. What an honor.
Having me, the honor is mine. I'm really excited to be here. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you about this book, this moment in American history, and the work we can all do to get through it.
I'm trying to think because I covered the election, of course, covered the nation's politics in a way when you appeared on my map where I first heard of you. And I think it was probably your election and the fact that you were elected with Dana Nessel as Attorney General, of course, Gretchen Whitmer as governor. But I feel like you really got put on the national map shortly after the 2020 election when Trump was contesting the election, starting the big lie, and a mob showed up at your house. Is that kind of when you appeared on the national stage, when people came to potentially hurt you and your family at your home? Is that when we all heard about Jocelyn Benson?
That was an escalation. I think the first time for me was when the president attacked me on Twitter in May of 2020, calling me the rogue Secretary of State from Michigan who had sent out ballots to everyone in the state, and he was going to withhold federal funding from the entire state as a result. And I was like, I woke up that morning and thought, long gone are the days where we get a letter from the president and that it's something that we frame and hang on the wall. Now I'm being attacked on Twitter by the president of the United States, the leader of the free world. Okay. I mean, no one wants to find themselves in that spot, let's be honest. But at the same time, after I sort of lived in the terror and the fear of that moment, I took a beat and I was like, wait a minute. I didn't do what he's saying I did. I didn't send out ballots to everybody in the state. I just sent out information on how to vote from home in the midst of a pandemic. And my colleagues in Republican states did this too. So I wrote him back on Twitter, because as one does, and said, hi, didn't send out ballots, sent out information on how to vote just by like my Republican colleagues in Iowa and West Virginia and in Georgia. By the way, I have a name. It's Jocelyn Benson. And have a good day, Mr. President. And then he wrote back again, of course, we became pen pals on Twitter. And I think attacked me again. And I wrote him back and I said, still wrong. Still didn't send out ballots. Probably shouldn't withhold federal funding from our state as a result. By the way, my name's Jocelyn. You can call me that. Secretary Benson works too, not rogue or whatever it is you called me. So it was this back and forth that got a lot of national headlines and really sent me a message that this was going to be an election season where I should expect our elections to be under the national spotlight. And he attacked Governor Whitmer and Attorney General Nessel in that same 10-day span. And so we also found in each other a solidarity in standing up to this bully in the White House that carried us through that election and really prepared us to protect those election results on the other side of it.
Crazy times that we're living in, and the fact that you were targeted that way, I can't imagine how you navigated that, your family navigated that, or if you ever expected yourself to be in that position. You know, obviously, as a public person and at such a high profile, and it wasn't your first position like that it's possible, but I can't imagine you ever thought about that, much less where you start your book with the night that the mob showed up at your home. Your son was 4 years old. Your husband, who is in the military, was home with you. But all of a sudden, I mean, take us back to that night and tell us kind of what happens, the way you open the book. And it really draws you in as a reader. I got to say, you're not going to want to put it down the rest of the book either.
Yeah, it was a very harrowing night. And it started with a phone call I got from the Attorney General at 8:00. And she said, we just got intelligence that there's going to be an armed mob outside some female lawmaker's home. I don't know if it's you. I don't know if it's me. I don't know if it's someone else, but we got to be ready. And then sure enough, about an hour later, I started hearing the shouts in the bullhorns and the marching. And I was putting our Christmas decorations on our Christmas tree with my 4-year-old son, holding him while The Grinch Stole Christmas was playing in the background, the Benedict Cumberbatch version, in case you were wondering.
Okay.
And so as that was, it's our favorite, as that was all happening, I felt scared, right? Terrified, and I called Dana and said, it's me, I'm the one. And at the same time, my husband called 911. I carried my son upstairs and started running the bathwater loudly to drown out the shouts so that he could feel calm and safe, even while internally I was dealing with all of these emotions and fears and anxieties. Was a bullet going to come through a window? What was going to happen when law enforcement arrived? When were they going to arrive? Right? For 45 minutes, it was just a neighborhood security guard between the growing mob and my home. And so there was a lot of fear in that moment, but there was also a very distinct moment that evening that carried me through and was really the reason I wanted to write the book, to say, yes, that was a scary moment. It was terrifying. And there are a lot of scary moments we all endure. But in that moment, I found my sense of self, my purpose, which was to defend those results. I mean, this was a fair, free, accurate election. And the people outside my home weren't mad at me as a human being. They were mad at what I personified, the results of an election that they didn't like, and that the president of the United States was attacking and tearing apart. So in that moment, I found a sense of purpose and a boldness to say, not on my watch are you going to get me to not certify these elections. I'm going to just do more, and I'm going to find more strength in that moment. And ultimately, that's a part of the book as well, that these moments can be opportunities for us to grow stronger and find our strength and find our purpose. And that's certainly what ultimately that harrowing night was for me.
Oh, I can't. I mean, it's so, everybody should read the book for that reason alone, that first chapter, but the rest of it is so inspiring as well. When I first saw the title of the book, as a comedian, I immediately wanted to make fun of it. But then you're a politician running for office, you write the book, but I knew enough about you to like not take a cheap shot. Not that I would have ever done it publicly, but I'm just thinking in my head or something, Purposeful Warrior. And then I read more about you, and then I started reading the book. And then I went from wanting to make fun of it to identifying as a purposeful warrior myself. My brand is stand up. I've been standing up to bullies my entire life and career, and as an activist, and it's not been easy and it's been terrifying. But I went from like poking fun because I'm a judgmental prick to, oh my God, I think this is how I identify. So tell us what it means to be a purposeful warrior. And there's so many different ways we can define it so many different ways. But where did you come up with this idea, this thought, this brand, this name?
Yeah, I believe in standing up, right, to bullies. That's the story that ultimately I wanted to tell, the fortitude that it takes, and the real pushback. I mean, part of the book talks about bullies punch back, right? And another story talks about how you can stand up for yourself and have it fall on deaf ears. So I wanted to have an honest take through a number of stories throughout my life that talked about standing up as a warrior, fighting for something. But that was the essence of it. You're not just a fighter. You're fighting for something. You're not just standing up and throwing punches. You have a focus. You have an intention, and you have to be mission driven. Yeah. So a lot of the book is about how to endure the wind that comes in your face when you stand up for what you believe in. It's about how to go through that, but also how to go through it while still moving the needle on the issue you care about, whether it's protecting your kids or standing up for your parents to get them access to healthcare or standing up for democracy or for your voice. Whatever it is, if you're going to fight and endure all this challenge, you want to know you're making a difference. So the idea of being a purposeful warrior is being a fighter, but also being having an impact with that fight, making a difference. An entire chapter is about how we measure impact with our fight. And so it's important to me to say it's not purposeful warrior is not just you got to fight with a purpose. It's as you fight, focus on having an impact and moving the needle and doing good for others.
I feel like when I read it, anybody could identify with it. It's so important just to be purposeful, thinking about the philosophy of life and why we're here and what we do when we wake up in the morning. But to be a purposeful warrior is to have kind of a cause, and to fight apathy is how I define it when I first started doing the show. And now it's changed and morphed so much. But let's do a little improv, because anyone can be a purposeful warrior. How does a single mom identify as a purposeful warrior?
Fight for your kids. Fight for their, whatever it is, good education, healthcare, for them to come home safely into loving arms every day. You can all find some things, large or small. It doesn't have to be, I want to cure cancer, right? It could just be, I want to make sure my kid grows up safe and healthy and happy. That's my purpose. And I'm going to fight for that and make sure that happens. Or, however you define it, large or small, that's something that is unique to you. And that's the other aspect of this book, being authentic. You don't have to fight someone else's fight, or your purpose, your definition of who you are shouldn't be defined by someone else, whether they be powerful or whether they be your parent or whether they be your spouse. It can only be defined by you. So it's all about finding your own power, not allowing anyone else to define your purpose or who you are, and then seeing the wind that comes in your face by standing up and fighting for that purpose as an opportunity to become stronger and to get better at fighting for that purpose.
I understand why you are highly intelligent. You've got a great formal education and you studied law. So I've been watching all these interviews and reading the book. You're really, really great at just communicating and the words that you choose and just the flow that you have. So, and it's great for what you want to do and for campaigning to be governor. In a lot of ways, you're selling yourself, your own credibility, your integrity. But my question is, because I raised 2 daughters and I wanted them to be confident and independent. That was my goal. And I'm really happy that they both are at 17 and 20. And now I'm working on a book. And so I wanted to have you as a subject for the book because the whole premise is it's about men raising girls to be confident and independent. But the premise is I ask women about their parents, about their dad specifically. So my question to you is, how are you this philosophical, thoughtful, passionate, empathetic, but also very intense and, intimidating person? I mean, you ran 34 marathons, 2 while you're pregnant. I guess why not more?
I just ran one on Sunday. I ran the London Marathon. It was amazing.
Sorry,
it was the largest marathon ever in history. It was incredible.
So who were you as a little girl? Your parents are public school teachers. Like, how did you become you? And don't be modest here, because I'm specifically wondering how you arrive at the character qualities that you possess.
Yeah, I mean, I would say I'm determined and I'm impatient, and I set big goals and I like to achieve them, and that's sort of the determination. But it comes from having 2 parents who were special education teachers. So some of my earliest memories are of them bringing me into the classroom with them and me sitting in the back at the coloring book and kind of watching, observing. I was 6, 7 at the time, as they would teach and work to ensure their students, kids with special needs, would have access to the same quality education that everyone else had access to. And so it instilled in me the sense that making people's lives better and ensuring everyone has a fair shot to succeed and thrive, that's a cause worth fighting for, to devoting your life to. And then I also saw how cuts in funding, how unfair decisions by principals and administrators made it harder for them to do their work, and how their voices weren't heard in the workplace, and what that meant for them. So to me, that also instilled a sense of your voice matters, speak up, no matter who tries to silence you, because only you know best what your kids need. The example of my parents, or what the people you're fighting for need. And so those experiences were very formative to me. And then I spent the beginning of my career in Montgomery, Alabama, when I was investigating hate groups and hate crimes around the country for the Southern Poverty Law Center. And that really also combined all of that sort of feeling of needing to stand up and fight, and being impatient. Like, if I'm going to fight, I actually want to move the needle and get stuff done. At the same time, seeing how many had fought before us, and achieved great things like the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and how we have a responsibility to them to keep fighting, and not just their battles, but new ones as well. So being in Selma and in Montgomery really created a foundational commitment from my part to say, no matter what I do with my life, I want to be someone who would have stood at the foot of the Edmund Pettus Bridge in March of 1965.
Yeah.
That's my life.
Yeah.
And so that helped me also form, the determination, the patience, the courage to, in 2020, stand up and protect our democracy.
Yeah, I interviewed John Lewis, seems like a million years ago now, but when I did, I felt like that I was on the map. Like I felt like I mattered. I felt like I want to stand by him and get in good trouble. And so I like the way that you talked about standing on that bridge. But just one more, I did my research, and forgive me, I could not find out too much about your parents. I didn't spend a lot of time. If you talked about it in the book, I haven't got there yet. But was there something in I too, my mom was a public school teacher, still with us. She's a saint. And so that had a huge effect on me. But is there anything about your dad specifically that he did or role modeled or said, or a conversation or a thing is there anything that you can tell me about him?
I think he was very focused on being truthful. And maybe it was as a parent to a kid, but really instilling on me the importance of truth and not lying and standing up for what you believe in. And then also one of the things that is instilled in me that he said is always the early bird catches the worm. Always tell me that repeatedly. And that was something that, it even echoes in my mind today when I think about getting out in front of something or starting early and really trying to establish yourself. It's how I've run all of my campaigns. This is my 4th statewide campaign. I've always started early, built early. And so that to me as well. He would also, with me and my brother, do a lot of races, like race to that tree and back in 45 seconds. So he also takes credit for the running thing and for me running marathons. But I think that created like a sense of urgency in me always, of like, I feel like I'm always racing. I'm always running physically, like literally and figuratively. And so him sort of, again, teaching me athleticism, I guess you could say, was also a part of making me who I am.
I love all of that. It's just, did gender come up at all? He had a brother, so it's like, does he raise you the same? Boys don't do that. Girls don't do this.
No, never. I mean, I went to a women's college. I mean, he sent me to a school and enabled me to attend a school where women were, where gender was not an issue at all in the classroom at all, because it just was a women's college. And so it was never, there was never a sense that there was something I couldn't accomplish because of my gender. There was instead an expectation that I would do everything I could with the time I was given to do as much good for as many people as I could. That was really what was instilled in me. And on top of that, there were external factors. Like I really wanted to be an umpire when I was little. I wanted to be, an umpire of a baseball game. Now I'm Secretary of State, so I call balls and strikes in elections. But I just assumed I couldn't be an umpire in Major League Baseball because
there were no women.
Right. And so it was more of those that created a ceiling that was I didn't see until I got up closer to sports.
Why umpire? Like, what was that about?
I think I just love the idea of justice, right? Of fairness, of being like, that was wrong.
Oh, that explains. Yeah,
right?
Sure.
That was all, you're out. I think it was more like that, wanting to like enforce the rules of the game.
Right. That makes sense. Let me just ask you one more question. It's not specifically about the book, but certainly is about politics. I think there's a lot of conversations in this country right now about, obviously, always about gender. You're raising a son. How old is he now? And what role, like, what do you think about this conversation about men and boys and the problems that they're having? I spent most of my work and career when it comes to gender focusing on inequities for women, specifically reproductive rights, voting rights now, unfortunately, domestic abuse, obviously economic and healthcare inequities, and all of these issues. I focus mostly on women and girls, read about them, and obviously as a father of daughters, wanting to know personally how it affects them. But now I'm thinking a lot more about men and boys. You're raising a son, and everybody's asking this question as it comes to politics, and we're seeing all these numbers about why men vote this way, why young men are now voting more conservative. What are your thoughts around that subject at all, and raising a young man yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it's the joy of my life. He's 8 years old. He's going to be 18 in 10 years. And so for me in this moment, everything I do, everything we do as a country, as a state for the next 10 years is going to define his future. And that's not lost on me. It's going to define the future of young men like him all around our state and our country, kids like him all around, and who I think we have a responsibility to prepare to inherit our future. So what I've been able to do and what I've focused on really are just the qualities that I want anyone to show as an adult and as a kid: courage, choosing to be kind, standing up for what's right, telling the truth, being fair. All the principles in this book that are about being a warrior, they don't just adhere to women seeking to be a purposeful warrior.
Absolutely
Men
not,
and women together, we can be warriors for ourselves, for our communities, for those we love. And so I focus on it from that. Of course, I want him to believe in all his friends, the girls and the boys that come to our home and he plays with and are friends with, we have these conversations. They're really interested in politics. They really don't understand how America elected Donald Trump, to be honest. Like, they keep asking me, like, why, what is happening? The hardest thing I had to do after the re-election in 24 when he won was go to school with my son the next day and see kids, young boys, 6 years old, crying about it.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it's all about modeling what we want them to be and making sure they know they can do anything. And I think that ultimately, more than any societal structures, can drive these kids forward, and so that they can feel the power of their own voice as warriors, whether they be warriors for playing football or sports, or warriors for math or chess, or simply just standing up for each other in the classroom. That's what I try to teach them.
I heard somebody define strength as one of the strongest thing you ever. He was a guy, and all these ideas on the right talking about you got to be a hero, you got to do all these traditional kinds of acts of strength. And this guy wrote this essay about it. I forget his name, where he said he defined the greatest thing he ever did, the strongest thing he ever did was taking care of an elderly loved one for like a year.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, how we define strength is really important. You do such a good job at it in the book. Take me back. You mentioned, I got to ask you about that early work you did. I kind of understand the impetus for it now, why you did it, but you went undercover and investigated violent extremist groups, I think for the Southern Poverty Law Center, right?
Yes. Yeah.
What was
20? Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy. I guess what's most interesting about it is I think a lot of people, especially even on the left, were in denial about the domestic terror threat and the extremist groups that they were fringe. I never thought that. I always thought they were growing and growing. You've known this for a long time, and they've now come for you, it would seem, in certain ways. Tell me about that work you did then, and how you think the country, I think, probably has gotten worse along those lines.
I think a lot of what was underground, and in the late 90s when I was doing this work, Columbine had just happened. And
right.
So my initial work was to connect those shooters in Columbine to the right-wing, anti-government ideology that had radicalized them. And so I started to see it then. It's evolved a lot, and it's global as well. It's not just, I ultimately went overseas and did these investigations on an international level. But what I saw was just, it was underground. There wasn't a lot of oxygen being given to it. And what Trump did was actually in Charlottesville and the like, give it oxygen to kind of come above ground and be much more prevalent. And so when I see the tragedy unfold on January 6, 2021, right at our U.S. Capitol, we see it as for what it is. And also I see it as directly connected to a lot of the organizations in that network that I investigated and their plans. When I hear even about, deportations without due process, this was stuff that was written about in these manifestos that I would read in the late 90s that would give me nightmares. So it was clear to me that whether in the 1960s or in the 1990s or now in the 2020s, this hate has always been this division that arose out of exclusion. Everyone I tracked had been bullied when they were younger, and a lot of what I tried to uncover was the why. Why have you chosen extremism? Why have you chosen hate? Why have you chosen to commit hate crimes? And a lot of it was being excluded, being bullied, almost universally, and how that led them to lash out in this way. It was a very formative line of work, very scary. I was very worried that they would kill me just like they were planning to kill others. But it also, at a very young age, gave me an opportunity to say who I was, which is someone who's going to expose this hate and fight it, as opposed to being afraid of it and doing nothing.
Amazing and important. You are now running for governor of Michigan, and what have you learned from the current governor or any other governor, like in terms of quality or tactics or strategy? that you think you can use? Because, I mean, I feel like Democrats, you know, the brand has been damaged so bad. But I've always kind of argued it's because Democrats believe in government, period. Like, there's so much damage that's been done to the idea of government that it's the problem. The fact that Democrats are generally arguing for, you know, policy and government solutions in a lot of ways, it's almost just that. But what have you learned from other governors, or Republican or Democrat, or, you know, the woman that you've worked closely with at the top of Michigan now, Gretchen Whitmer?
I would say three things. I mean, number one, government right now, especially at the federal level, is showing up everywhere we don't want it and nowhere where we need it, right? And so a lot of what governors can do is make sure government actually shows up at the state level for people, covering and supporting healthcare, cutting costs, cutting, you know, wasteful spending, making their lives easier, and then getting out of the way. And so I think the best governors right now are things who, number one, who define government as something that can help make your life easier and then get out of the way. Folks like Josh Shapiro, J.B. Pritzker has been really, I think, extraordinary right now at defining this moment and the warriors we need to be in this moment. And Wes Moore, a number of others, Mara Healey, Janet Mills. So I've been in part really admiring a lot of what these folks who I've known for a long time are doing to get things to make government work well for folks. To number two, get things done, because it's not enough just to listen and hear, which Democrats need to do more of, but also come back with a solution and then get things done, move the needle, improve people's lives. Governors are doing that. Democratic governors are doing that, like a Josh Shapiro in Pennsylvania, who I think is really extraordinary. Tim Walz in Minnesota, of course, as well. And then third, in addition to making government work well, getting things done, number three is you need to be a firewall in this moment. I think what Janet Mills in Maine did by saying, you know, that's not who we are. I'm going to stand up for what's right, and I'll see you in court. And then she won in court because the law was on her side and she knew it. So I think governors in this moment can also be defining our states, our people as citizens, as warriors for the truth, for what's right, at a time when we're not seeing that leadership at the federal level.
Before I let you go, there's so many of us. I don't know if you saw the woman who was carried out of a town hall the other night. That's my district. I'm in Mike Lawler's district in New York, and I was at the town hall before, and they almost tried to carry me out too. And a lot of my fellow activists and citizens and friends and family members are terrified now more than ever of you know, going outside and protesting and doing, you know, being public about their opinions. What do you say to those people who are sitting at, you know, filled with a lot of fear and anxiety and fear about the state of the world and what, if anything, they can do to change it? What do you say to those people?
Yeah, I think, you know, it's a terrifying moment, and fear in moments like this. It's okay. It's completely understandable to be terrified and fearful. That is what a lot of these acts happening all around the country, that in some ways they're intentional to make us fearful, to make us feel like our voice doesn't matter, and to be afraid to speak out. And there are countless stories of dictators throughout history using fear as a tool to control.
Yeah.
But in America, in our democracy, no one can take away our voice without our consent. No one can control who we are unless we give them that power. So in this moment, allow that fear to fuel you to, in ways large and small, show up to the meetings and wait until you feel courageous enough to say something, but still show up. Don't check out. Stay in the fight, whatever that fight means for you, whether it's access to quality healthcare or better housing or schools for your kid or just safety in our communities. Stay in the fight. Don't give up, because know that throughout history, the only way we get through moments like this, with all the fear and the anxiety and the chaos, is by finding our strength as a community of purposeful warriors to fight through this. And if we can do that together, fighting for each other and ourselves and our communities, we can emerge from this moment with a stronger and healthier, more democracy than ever before. That's the world I'm fighting for. And I believe if we choose to join and fight for that together, there's nothing that can get in our way.
You're so inspiring. You know, this conversations, I'm really grateful for the conversation, of course, but I'm more grateful that my job gets me to prepare to talk to you, because I've been reading the book and watching all these interviews, and I've been really inspired by your voice, your action, and your career. And I'm very grateful. I guess my final question is, where did you get one of those shirts people are asking?
This one?
Yeah.
Oh, Lingua Franca designed it. I had it made.
Oh, you had it made? You should sell those on your campaign site to raise money there.
I'll reach out to them and see. There are, you can go to jocelynbenson.com to get lots of different gear.
Cool.
And there's lots of warrior gear out there. But this I made because this is who I am. And I wanted something to wear to communicate.
You certainly are.
Made it for me. And you can go to Etsy, actually, frankly, and there's, lots of folks who will, with this beautiful lettering, make a sweatshirt for you too.
I really appreciate you joining me. Thank you so much. Good luck with the book. I hope everybody goes and buys it, and all our Michigan friends organize for Jocelyn Benson. Yeah, there it is.
Thanks for having me. Take care.
Yep.
Thanks, Pete.
There you go, everybody. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson, soon to be the governor of Michigan. I hope. Go get the book, Purposeful Warrior. Follow and support her on social media. Let her know that you heard her here on the show. That's a big deal. It's a big deal. Make a big deal to me that her people, her book people, her people know that we had a lot of folks listening and appreciate her joining. Go let her know on social media. Get the book. And that's all I've got for you. I hope to see you at tonight's Hangout for subscribers. See you there at 8 p.m. East. And let me know if you can't make it. Send me a permission slip. All right, everybody? No, we usually get 50 to 80 people at these Hangouts. I hope to see you at tonight's. John Carroll is often there. He sings us in and out, writes all the music for this show. He's the Grammy Award-winning singer and songwriter, and he has a new album out, johncarroll.org, and you should go buy it now. That's it. That's all I've got for you. I will talk to you tonight or tomorrow or anytime on the Discord platform if you're a stand-up subscriber.
Boy, you better stand up. Stand up. Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know what's right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence, and even in